The person glared at me and scoffed. Seriously, Wei. Have you lost your eyes along with your memory? Can't you see where you're going? His tone was mocking, and a surge of anger rose within me. I looked up at him, hastily trying to cover my chest with my hands. My robe was nearly transparent, and I felt exposed. Who's this? Rudy. I muttered, my gaze shifting to his right hand, which was wrapped in a bandage. He sneered, his eyes scanning my disheveled state. So, how did you end up like this? And what's the rush? Need my help with something? His words dripped with sarcasm. Before I could respond, Tong and Bao rushed toward us. Bao's eyes widened as he took in my appearance. Child Wei, what happened? He asked, concern lacing his voice. I shivered from the cold, my teeth chattering as I whispered, take me to my room. I'm freezing. Tong stepped forward, his expression serious. Child, let's go. As we turned to leave, I shot a glance at the stranger, who smirked at me once more. As we walked toward my room, Tong asked, Child Wei, what happened in the royal bathing chamber? And why were you outside like that? I shook my head, feeling embarrassed. Please, don't talk about it. Tong and Bao exchanged a knowing glance but said nothing more. When we reached my room, I saw a set of hanfu laid out on the bed. Bao reminded me, child, get ready for the ceremony. We'll be waiting outside. I rolled my eyes in frustration. As I attempted to put on the hanfu, I quickly realized it was far more complicated than I remembered. Why is this so difficult? I muttered. After several failed attempts, I finally admitted defeat. Peeking through the door, I whispered to Tong and Bao, help me. They stepped inside, and with their assistance, I finally managed to wear the hanfu correctly. Bao whispered, child, you've even forgotten how to wear hanfu. I shot him a defensive look. Do you think I've ever worn one before? Or that just because I'm Chinese, I automatically know how to wear ancient clothing? Tong and Bao exchanged a confused glance. What do you mean, child? They asked in unison. I shook my head, frustration bubbling up. Never mind. Tong handed me a sword, and I immediately noticed his reddened hand. Concerned, I grabbed his wrist. What happened to your hand? I asked. Tong quickly pulled his hand back, leaving me a little confused. Bao chuckled and said, Child Wei, he's so clumsy. He spilled boiling water on his own hand. I gave a small, firm smile and said, okay, but I'm not taking the sword with me. Bao frowned. But why? It's too heavy, and my arm aches when I hold it for too long, I replied. Tong insisted, child, you should take it. You know about the ceremony. I cut him off. Of course, I know. When are we leaving for it? I'll take it then, but right now, I need to see Seo Yeon. Tong and Bao hesitated before finally agreeing. As they turned away, I muttered under my breath, I'm not taking this burden with me anyway. Right now, I need to find Seo Yeon and ask her about that woman, why was she acting so mean? We stepped out of the room, and the stranger I had bumped into earlier was standing nearby, gently cradling a sleek black cat in his arms. I didn't notice him at first, but he was watching me closely. Whispering to the feline, he said, Kuro, Wei fears you. A sly grin spread across his face as he continued, I have faith in you, Kuro. You can do it. Go, and don't disappoint me. Suddenly, the cat darted toward me, its eyes locked onto mine. I know it sounds weird, but honestly, I'm terrified of cats. My fear was instant, and I let out a terrified scream. Ha! A cat. It's a cat. Tong and Bao rushed to my side, frantically trying to shoo the cat away, but it skillfully dodged their attempts. Panic set in, and I bolted into a full sprint, the cat chasing after me. Tong and Bao gave chase as well, trying to catch the feline, but their efforts were futile. They ended up crashing into each other and falling to the ground. That man stood there watching us, laughing hysterically. I zigzagged through the endless corridors, desperate to escape the relentless cat. My hurried footsteps echoed through the halls, mingling with the cat's playful meows. Then, I spotted Huan Shu ahead and immediately made a beeline for him. Hiding behind him, I grabbed his shoulders and pleaded, "Prince, save me from that cat. It's a cat. Save me." Huan Shu stood firm, shielding me from the so-called threat. His calm demeanor was a stark contrast to my frantic state. Huan Shu shot a death stare, and the feline froze in place. Hyun approached, attempting to catch the cat, but it darted away, vanishing into the shadows. Huan Shu cast me a sideways glance, his voice cold and detached. "The cat is gone. Now, leave me." I hastily let go of his shoulders and stepped back. "I didn't mean to hold you, it was just that cat." Huan Shu ignored my apology and walked away, leaving me feeling both embarrassed and relieved. I watched him depart and whispered under my breath, "Rude." Then, I realized I had been separated from Tong and Bao. "Where am I?" I muttered, then started walking in the opposite direction of Huan Shu. After wandering for a while, I finally found Seo Yeon in a yard. As I approached her, two women suddenly stepped in, blocking my path. "Who are you, and why are you stopping me?" I asked. One of them replied, "I'm Tim Tim," and the other added, "I'm Bim Bim." "Child Wei, have you forgotten us?" I looked at them both and said, "Okay, Tim Tim and Bim Bim. Please step aside. I need to speak with Seo Yeon about something important." Tim Tim shook her head. "The princess is upset with you, child. She doesn't want to talk to you." "Upset? At me? For what?" I asked, confused. Bim Bim crossed her arms. "The princess has told us everything." I frowned. "I understand she's upset, but what exactly have I done?" Seo Yeon intervened from behind, saying, "Don't you recall what happened at your house? You threw my hand away when I placed it on your shoulder." I racked my brain, remembering the incident, and muttered, "This girl is so dramatic." Seo Yeon narrowed her eyes. "Did you say something?" I quickly replied, "It was just a little thing." "Why are you getting so angry?" Seo Yeon shouted, "A little thing? Is this just a little thing to you?" I muttered to myself, "I'm tolerating this dramatic girl only because I want to know about Wei Liang's mother." Tim Tim tilted her head. "Child, did you say something?" I responded quickly, "No." Bim Bim whispered suspiciously, "I heard you say something." I sighed and turned back to Seo Yeon. "I apologize for that." But she looked away, still upset. I tried to step closer, but Tim Tim and Bim Bim blocked my path again until Seo Yeon finally instructed them, "Let him come." As they stepped aside, I approached Seo Yeon and apologized again. She refused to look at me, and I could still sense her lingering anger. Determined, I stood before her. "Seo Yeon," I said softly. She ignored me, turning her head away. I whispered under my breath, "This is really weird, but if I want to know the truth, I have to do this." Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her close. Tim Tim and Bim Bim gasped in shock, quickly covering their eyes. "Oh, child Wei, what are you doing?" I muttered to myself, "Living in a man's body. I don't know what else is left for me to do. I'm a girl, and now I realize how hard it is for a man to handle a woman." I looked at Seo Yeon and thought, let me try the way Kaito impresses girls. I said to Seo Yeon, "You know how much I love you, so why are you angry with me?" I pondered for a moment, wondering, should I kiss her? Nah, I shouldn't, but if I want to impress her, I need to act like Kaito. Just as I leaned in, I caught sight of Huan Shu walking ahead, with Hyun following behind. Huan Shu suddenly stopped, causing Hyun to collide with his back. Rubbing his nose, Hyun asked, "What happened, Your Highness?" He then followed Huan Shu's gaze and looked in our direction. As Huan Shu's eyes met mine, I felt a surge of discomfort and immediately pulled back. Seo Yeon muttered, "Next time, I won't forgive you." I nodded, acknowledging her warning. Seo Yeon waved her hand and said, "Wei, what happened?" Then she hugged me. Huan Shu's grip tightened on his sword, his anger palpable. Still visibly upset, he ignored me and walked away. I thought to myself, from all of this, it's clear that she is Wei Liang's girlfriend, but what about the rumors of Huan Shu and Wei Liang's relationship? Rumors are just rumors, I shouldn't think too much about it. But Huan Shu's behavior, it speaks louder than words. Just then, Tong and Bao arrived and asked, "Child, where have you been? We've been searching all over the palace for you." I looked at them, and their gazes shifted to Tim Tim and Bim Bim. Tong exclaimed, "Tim Tim," while Bao said, "Bim Bim." Their eyes widened in surprise. Seo Yeon intervened, saying, "Tim Tim, Bim Bim, if you'd like, you can go with them." However, Tim Tim replied, "I don't want to go with Tong," and Bim Bim said, "I don't want to go with Bao." They both scrunched up their faces, making comical expressions. I chuckled along with Seo Yeon, and she asked, "What happened, Tim Tim and Bim Bim?" They both huffed, "He never listens to me," and walked away. Tong and Bao looked at me and said, "Child Wei, we're coming." Then they ran after Tim Tim and Bim Bim, calling out, "Tim Tim, stop. Bim Bim, stop." I watched them leave and chuckled. These two men always behave like jokers. Seo Yeon's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she looked at me. "Wei, what did you want to ask?" she said gently. She sat down on a large rock, patting the space beside her. "Wei, come sit here." I sat down, my voice barely above a whisper. For the first time, I'm actually thankful to Kaito. Since childhood, I've hated his playboy nature, but thanks to him, his personality is helping me now. Seo Yeon's expression turned thoughtful, her eyes locked onto mine. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. I hesitantly replied, "I mean that woman. Why was she behaving like that? Was she Wei Liang? I mean, my mother." Seo Yeon hesitated, then said, "I shouldn't say." But I urged her on, my eyes locked onto hers. "You know I love you. Can't you just tell me this one thing?" I pleaded. Seo Yeon's expression turned concerned. "What if it hurts you?" she asked. "I don't want to hurt you." I reassured her, "No, it won't hurt me." She hesitated again before nodding. "Okay, but promise me you won't tell anyone what I'm about to say. If Jean Ling finds out, she'll be upset." I nodded, and Seo Yeon began to explain. "After the war, people started hating you because of the rumors that you had betrayed the palace. As a result, they targeted your sister whenever she went outside. Men would harass her, calling her the traitor's sister. Even the news of your death gave them an excuse to disrespect your family." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Your uncle was in a coma, which gave them an even bigger opportunity. And the woman you're talking about, she wasn't your mother. She's your aunt. She thinks you're the reason for all these troubles, which is why she acted that way. But believe me, she loves you so much. She's just a little frustrated." My face fell, and I whispered under my breath, "I know who's behind all this. It's no one but Huan Shu. Maybe Wei Liang knew the truth about him, so he killed him." I clenched my fists, determination burning within me. "I'll expose you to everyone, no matter what. As long as I'm here, I won't stop trying. I won't let you hurt another innocent person, not in front of me." Fear crept into my heart as I considered the danger. I have to be careful. What if he tries to kill me again? Maybe he was behind that attack. But then why did he save me? The answer hit me like a flash of insight. Yes, because of Jean Ling. He didn't want to arouse suspicion. That's why. Seo Yeon waved a hand in front of my face, snapping me out of my thoughts. Wei, what's wrong? She asked. I looked at her, still processing everything. I mean, if she wasn't my mother, then who was? And how did my uncle end up in a coma? Seo Yeon was about to respond when Tim Tim and Bim Bim suddenly rushed towards us. Tim Tim exclaimed, Princess, look. Tong is irritating me like a mosquito. Bim Bim chimed in, and Bao is acting like a housefly. I couldn't help but chuckle. Seo Yeon stood up as Tong and Bao arrived, and a comical argument broke out. Tong protested, that's not true. Bao quickly added, yes, princess, believe us. Frustrated, Tim Tim and Bim Bim cried out like children, ah. Can't you just leave us alone, they shouted. Just then, a servant appeared, saying, young master and princess, please proceed to the grand hall for the ceremony. We began to leave, with Tong and Bao still engaged in a lively dispute with Tim Tim and Bim Bim. Seo Yeon's gaze swept over my entire body before she finally asked with concern, Wei, where's your sword? Are you going to attend the ceremony without it? I replied nonchalantly, it's heavy, I couldn't hold it for too long. Seo Yeon started to protest, but I cut her off, saying, don't worry about it. Huan Shu and Dae Hyun were approaching from a different direction, and I accidentally collided with him. I immediately stepped back, putting some distance between us. Seo Yeon and the others bowed, but I refused to do so. Huan Shu's gaze fell upon my empty hands. I whispered to myself, why is he looking at me like that? Is he thinking about the incident in the bathing chamber? My face reddened with embarrassment until he finally sneered, where's your sword? Are you planning to roam around the entire palace like this? Hearing this, I let out a sigh of relief and muttered under my breath, that's great. He wasn't thinking about it. Huan Shu repeated his question, his voice low and menacing. I rolled my eyes and replied, none of your business. Why do you care whether I bring it or not? Huan Shu's face darkened with anger. Seo Yeon quickly intervened, saying, Prince, he'll take his sword. Please don't be angry. But I refused. No, I won't take it with me. Let's go. As I started walking away, Huan Shu suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me toward him. Our faces were inches apart as he hissed, do you think you can just walk away like this? I retorted, yes, I'm going like this, without a sword. You have no right to command me. Huan Shu's grip tightened, his fingers digging into my skin as he sneered, oh, shut up. I order you to go and take your sword. If you don't, then. He trailed off, expecting me to cower in fear. But I refused to back down. So what? I challenged, my voice steady. I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. Of course, a heartless man like you is capable of anything. Under my breath, I muttered, I lost my memory, but as I've heard from others, the sword you're holding is actually mine. My eyes locked onto Huan Shu's, a spark of accusation igniting within them. I took a deliberate step forward, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Isn't the sword you're holding actually mine, and the one I have yours? I paused, locking eyes with Huan Shu, daring him to deny it. My voice dropped to a low, even tone. So, if you want me to take the sword that supposedly belongs to me, then give me the one you're holding. I held out my hand, palm up, expecting him to hand over the sword. Huan Shu's grip on my arm loosened slightly, but our faces remained inches apart. He muttered, just shut up. Then, his grip tightened again. I winced in pain. My arm is hurting, I said, but he didn't listen. I tried to push him away, but his hold only grew stronger. Dae Hyun attempted to intervene. Your Highness. But Huan Shu cut him off sharply. Don't interfere. Everyone watched in fear as Seo Yeon tried to reason with him. I turned to her and said, Seo Yeon, you know he's heartless. It doesn't matter what we say to him. For a brief moment, Huan Shu's grip loosened, only to tighten again, even more forcefully. I grunted in pain. I struggled to break free and shouted, it hurts. Just as Huan Shu was about to speak, a man suddenly arrived. His large, bare hands grabbed me, pulling me away and forcing Huan Shu to release my arm. I immediately started rubbing it. Huan Shu turned to face the man. What is it, General Kim? He asked. At that, everyone bowed. General Kim spoke firmly. That's not important, Prince. His Majesty has summoned you. You should go at once. Huan Shu sneered but left with Dae Hyun without another word. Before leaving, however, he shot me a cold, piercing glare. General Kim scolded me. Have you even thought about what would have happened if I hadn't stepped in? He kept shouting, but my mind was fixated on his appearance. A deep, jagged scar ran across his face, a sword slice mark starting from his forehead, cutting through his eye and nose. It was a testament to his battle-hardened past, making him look intimidating. A shiver ran down my spine. I whispered to myself, this man is terrifying. But despite his intimidating presence, he had saved me from Huan Shu. If he hadn't come, I swear Huan Shu would have broken my arm. Seo Yeon rushed to my side, her face filled with concern. Are you okay? General Kim turned to me. Wei Liang, are you alright? You should know how to behave. Someone like you, if you act so childishly, this is what happens. His voice was stern, but beneath his gruff tone, I detected a hint of kindness. I thought to myself, who is this man? What kind of relationship does he have with Wei Liang? Overall, he seems good, unlike Huan Shu. I looked at him, and Seo Yeon subtly signaled me not to say anything. I nodded, deciding it was best to stay quiet. Seo Yeon spoke up, General, Child Wei is sorry for that. She pinched me and signaled for me to apologize. I sighed and said, yes, I'm sorry. Why is Seo Yeon acting like this? I muttered to myself. General Kim nodded, his expression softening slightly. Okay, no problem. I'm just glad to see you're doing well. Just then, the stranger I had bumped into earlier arrived, shouting like an excited child. Uncle! He was holding the same white cat, which stared at me with an unblinking gaze. I screamed, ah, a cat, and stumbled backward, falling down as my heart raced. The stranger patted his cat, a look of amusement appearing on his face. General Kim sighed. Kim Jae, that's enough. Leave that cat alone. Don't you know Wei is afraid of cats? Kim Jae rolled his eyes. Fine, uncle. He put the cat down and said, Kuro, go. The cat strutted past me, its tail twitching, and Seo Yeon helped me up. General Kim turned back to me. Wei Liang, I'm glad to see you're doing well. I've heard you've lost your memory. Kim Jae sneered, his eyes glinting with mischief. I nodded, feeling a pang of embarrassment. Seo Yeon answered for me, yes, General. General Kim studied me for a moment. Where's your sword? I was about to respond, but Kim Jae cut in with a smirk. Come on, Wei, did you lose your sword along with your memory? He chuckled at his own joke. Kim Jae. General Kim snapped. Shut up. Is that something to joke about? Kim Jae sighed. Fine, uncle. General Kim then turned back to me. Wei Liang, go and get your sword. You know exactly what people will say. First, the rumors, and then, if they see you like this. He trailed off, his gaze sharp and unreadable. I nodded in understanding. Kim Jae suddenly tugged at General Kim's sleeve. Uncle, come with me. General Kim frowned. What now? Kim Jae made a childish face. I got something to show you. General Kim sighed. Wei, don't go without your sword. With that, he left. Meanwhile, in a private chamber, Huan Shu stood before his father, the king. Sung Min and Su Min were also present. The king narrowed his eyes at Huan Shu. Huan Shu, I hope you won't cause any trouble at the ceremony. Huan Shu's grip tightened. His Majesty continued, you know exactly why this ceremony is being held. Kings from other empires will be attending, and I expect you not to cause any disturbances. Do not speak unless necessary. Huan Shu muttered under his breath, I hope you won't disrespect Wei. Sung Min noticed Huan Shu's frustration and stepped closer to him. Don't worry, he'll behave as you want, he assured the king. Huan Shu snapped, am I your puppet? Do you think I'll just do whatever you say? The king's frustration was palpable. Sung Min tried to silence Huan Shu, but before the tension could escalate further, Su Min interjected, Father, we should go. You can trust that Huan Shu won't cause trouble there. Huan Shu, still frustrated, left the room. Outside, Dae-hyun stood waiting. Huan Shu glanced at him briefly before walking away, with Dae-hyun silently following behind. The grand hall buzzed with nobles and dignitaries. Its high ceilings and marble floors gleamed under the sunlight, reflecting the grandeur of the occasion. I wandered through the crowd with Bao when, suddenly, I collided with someone, spilling juice all over his expensive attire. The man shouted, Are you blind? I quickly apologized. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. His anger faded as his gaze settled on my face, shifting into one of surprise. Oh, Wei Liang, he exclaimed. Then, raising his voice for the entire hall to hear, he announced, Everyone, look here. It's Wei Liang, the traitor. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Whispers spread like wildfire among the nobles and dignitaries, their hushed voices carrying words of disdain and judgment. A second man, possibly his friend, sneered, Who invited you here? A third man scoffed, He doesn't need an invitation, his shamelessness is enough. Haven't you heard? Confused and feeling defensive, I turned to the first man. I already apologized. Why are you acting like this? Bao tugged at my arm, whispering urgently, Child Wei, let's leave. Before we could move, one of the men shoved Bao aside. You're just a servant, get out of here, he spat. That was the last straw. I snapped, You how dare you talk to him like that? Didn't your mother teach you how to respect others? The crowd's whispering grew louder, some people gasping at my outburst, while others nodded in disapproval, their expressions stern. The first man sneered, Since when did you start acting like this? You used to be different. Someone else chimed in, I heard you lost your memory. The second man added mockingly, I've never seen someone die and then come back, with memory loss, no less. I whispered to myself, What did Wei Liang do to make people hate him so much? What kind of betrayal? A surge of anger and confusion swelled within me. Just then, my gaze landed on Qianli, who stood at a distance, smirking as he sipped his juice, clearly enjoying the drama. A third man, perhaps another friend of theirs, grabbed my arm. I shoved his hand away and pushed him back. He laughed, his tone mocking. Come on, why are you getting so angry? The crowd's murmurs grew louder still, with some people pointing at me and others covering their mouths in shock. Bao ran to Seo Yeon, his face filled with urgency. Princess! Princess! Child Wei is in trouble. Seo Yeon's expression shifted to one of deep concern. Back in the grand hall, someone laughed mockingly. Ha ha ha, Wei Liang, do you remember what you did before spreading rumors about your own death? His laughter rang out through the hall. The three men began closing in on me, and the rest of the crowd chuckled along with them. Laughter and whispers filled the grand hall, an overwhelming cacophony of sound that made my skin crawl. At that moment, Seo Yeon arrived with Bao. She grabbed my arm, her eyes scanning my face. Wei, are you okay? One man scoffed, Princess, has this traitor brainwashed you too? Seo Yeon's face flushed with anger. She turned on him, her voice sharp. Am I talking to you? And how dare you call him a traitor? The crowd's murmurs intensified once more, some shouting in agreement with Seo Yeon, others hurling insults at me. Someone sneered, we'll call him what he is. Why are you so angry? Seo Yeon stepped forward, her eyes flashing with protectiveness as she positioned herself in front of me. You, she began, but another voice suddenly cut her off. Princess, why are you behaving like Jean Ling? The person sneered. You've been spending time with her, and now you're acting just like her. Their tone dripped with malice. Princess, that's why people told you not to associate with her. Seo Yeon's face reddened with anger as she snapped, don't say anything about Jean Ling. Her voice was fierce, her eyes blazing with determination to defend her friend. One man scoffed, or what, huh? As a girl, you should behave like one. I stepped in front of her, shoving the man back as I shouted, looks like your mother never taught you any manners. Amidst the commotion, one man's gaze fell upon my sword. His eyes widened in shock. Stop. Look at his sword. Isn't that His Highness's sword? Gasps rippled through the hall as whispers surged once more. Some people pointed at the sword, while others covered their mouths in disbelief. Another man spoke, his voice laced with suspicion. How did you get His Highness's sword? The hall erupted into a chorus of whispers, speculation, and accusations. One man sneered, I've never seen His Highness let anyone so much as touch his sword, yet look at you holding it. The atmosphere turned hostile. One man took a step closer, his hand reaching out to seize the sword. Instinctively, I pulled the sword back and shoved him away. Just shut up, all of you. I shouted, my voice echoing through the hall. I never liked it when Hai Rin bullied me, and how dare you treat me like this? Do you think I'll just stand here and take it? Hai Rin is far better than any of you. My eyes burned with defiance as I tightened my grip on the sword, ready to defend myself against the growing hostility. The man I had pushed, his face red with rage, grabbed me by the collar, his fist clenched and ready to strike. You'll pay for that, he snarled. He swung at me, but I was faster. I kicked him squarely in the groin, and he let out a pained grunt as he crumpled to the floor. Seo Yeon chuckled along with Bao and whispered, that's what he deserves. The crowd watched in stunned silence as I stood over him, my chest heaving. I shouted, do you think you can hurt me? My voice rang out, echoing off the marble walls. Seo Yeon stepped forward and urged, Wei, let's go from here. But before we could leave, two men, fueled by anger and a desire to defend their fallen companion, charged at me. I was ready. I gently pushed Seo Yeon aside and dodged their clumsy blows with ease, my boxing skills honed from years of training. I countered with swift jabs and hooks, sending them stumbling backward. Under my breath, I whispered, thanks, June, for teaching me boxing. The crowd watched in awe, their whispers growing louder. Some cheered me on, while others gasped in shock. Seo Yeon's eyes sparkled with pride as she watched me take down my attackers. As the two men retreated, nursing their wounds, I stood tall, my chest still rising and falling from the exertion. The murmurs of the crowd intensified, a mix of admiration and fear. The message was clear, would not be intimidated. Then, two more men arrived and grabbed me by the collar, but before they could do anything, Qian Li stepped into the tense scene. His sharp eyes settled on them. You know, creating a disturbance is prohibited, and the punishment will be severe, he said, his voice firm but measured. You should leave him alone. The man's grip on my collar tightened, but Qian Li's words had an effect. He glared at me, snarling, I'll see you later, before finally releasing me and storming off. Seo Yeon turned to Qian Li, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, child Qian. But I knew better. Qianli hadn't stepped in out of kindness, he had been watching the scene unfold, enjoying the drama, and had only interfered because things were getting out of hand. Seo Yeon glanced at me, expecting me to thank him. Instead, I rolled my eyes and muttered, "He doesn't need it." Just then, the king arrived and took his seat on the throne. One by one, the rulers of different kingdoms followed, each taking their place. The ceremony began, and after a while, Bao approached me, admiration shining in his eyes. "Child Wei, I saw you fighting," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "The way you punched that man's face, it was amazing. Can you teach me that move too?" I smiled and replied with a chuckle, "Maybe later, Bao." I muttered under my breath, "I miss June, Pratiksha, Barun, even Hai Rin and Kang, but not Kaito. I hope I find a way back to my own era soon." "Ha, Pratiksha, I miss you so much. You always protected me, and now I feel so lonely." My eyes drifted to Huan Shu, who sat with his head down, looking troubled. Dae-hyun was nowhere to be seen, and I wondered why Huan Shu seemed so upset. I muttered, "Of course, he's thinking about how to get the throne." My gaze then shifted to Seo Yeon, who was laughing with the other princesses. I couldn't help but feel a pang of awkwardness. The princesses were all smiling and giggling as they glanced in my direction, making me feel like an outsider. One of them, a beautiful girl with piercing green eyes, caught my gaze. She smiled, and I felt an unexpected surge of embarrassment. Seo Yeon suddenly turned to me, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Wei, come here." Before I could respond, she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the group of girls. "Look, everyone, he's here." The girls all blushed, their faces turning bright red as they gazed at me. I shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. Just then, my attention returned to Huan Shu. I noticed Dae-hyun leaning in and whispering something to him. Whatever he said made Huan Shu's expression darken. Without a word, he quickly exited the hall. I was stunned, wondering what Dae-hyun could have said to cause such a reaction. A sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "Silence," the advisor announced. The hall fell quiet. "Now, we will reveal the reason for this ceremony," he declared, a dramatic smile spreading across his face. "And we have good news for everyone present here." He paused, letting the tension build before finally giving the order. "Take them in." Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more episodes.